Hello, and welcome to Hospice Insights, the Law and Beyond, where we connect you to what matters in the ever-changing world of hospice and palliative care. A year in review, reflections, and hopes for the future. Brian, my favorite podcast partner, thanks for joining me.
Meg, my favorite podcast host.
I know. Well, I turned you on to podcasts, so...
Yes, I was not a believer, but boy, it's been how many years since we've been doing this, and I just love them. I love doing them. I love doing them with you.
Yeah. So I changed this up on you, Brian. It's sort of last minute because a couple months ago, I recorded this podcast with Greg Grabowski, and I did this whole thing. Here are 5 questions. You think about them, and then we both think about them, and then we share on prompt, like not sharing before, but all live on this on this podcast, what we think about what happened for our podcast in this previous year, and like what we think about the future. So anyway, Brian, this is like lightning round, because when we talked about year in review, there has been a lot of things that have gone on, but I think we didn't want to do a laundry list. So trying to shake it up.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you gave me the heads up a few hours ago. I've been putting some thought into this. So,
okay.
Yeah, let me know, fire away, and I'll answer off the top of my head here.
Okay. First question, Brian. Our biggest victory of 2024 for our team.
For our team, oh boy, I was. If you made that plural victories, I have a number of, I do a lot of the audit stuff. I kind of lead that group, and so I think about the attorneys on the team that do audits and the audits that I do. But I guess let me go back to your question. The biggest victory as a team, looking back, I think it would be this is kind of internal, but how we grew the team over the past year. A year ago, we had kind of a set number of attorneys, and over the past year, we've brought on a number of new associates. We've developed some associates who had just gotten started with us. And looking back, I'm very proud of how all of them have really grown into their roles on the team as attorneys, and to be able to put a lot of trust in them, give them responsibility, know that they're doing the right work. They're super smart, because I mean, you got to be a part of our law firm, but they're just good people, and they're very professional, and I just see that as a great victory over the past year, and it makes me kind of happy about the future too.
Yeah,
that we got a great foundation. We already had a foundation, but the foundation's bigger now, and we have even more to build upon going forward.
No, I think that is a great reflection, and I think the energy that new people adding to our team and bring is really wonderful. I when I made up this question, I immediately thought, like, because we have many victories, but the thing that got me like, yes. So maybe now I'm going to have you guess what you think I'm going to say.
Okay.
What do you think I'm going to say?
Well, I would, something that you and I worked on together had to do with this preliminary enforcement, and we got some bill revocation.
Termination.
The revocation of billing privileges, which was set to be revoked. We convinced CMS to rescind that after a lot of investigation and research and phone calls with CMS. Did I guess right?
Yes, that is.
Oh,
Here's
great.
like Brian and I working together for 15 years. Like, you read my mind. But that had that feeling of like other big cases we've won, like these giant extrapolations in the past, 40 million, 25 million. And like, just, I don't know. I don't want to say it's the magic of being a lawyer, but like when you can really get to the right result for someone and do great advocacy, and, that was make it or break it. And we made it. And they can survive into the future because of the work we did. So, and that was a tremendous victory, which obviously you hope never has to happen again. But with the rise in all of this provisional TPE stuff, that's going to be more into 2025, my guess is that is not the last one. That's not in my hopes category for the future. That is
Right.
sort of but I think our biggest victory was dealing with that and successfully. And I think like how we've grown the practice over the years is, the government is changing how it's doing things. And because we do so much of this work, I feel like when these things happen, they're usually never the first time they happen for us. Obviously, there always is a first time. Like this was this first time we had to deal with this termination in this context. But then the next time that happens, you can really be that steady hand. Like we've dealt with so many deactivations of Medicare billing numbers this year and stuff like that. Like you can be a steady hand when someone's dealing with what is, you know, could be the end of their business. Um,
Yeah,
and having experience behind you, like I've seen this through successfully.
it reminded me of other occasions, and hospice changes so much that you and I have experienced this many times over the years when there is that new thing and just the excitement of getting the brain trust together, you and me, and it's been great associates through the years. And this was also a situation where we had other attorneys involved, and we're really just peeling this apart. And how do we solve this problem for the client? It's relatively new, so there's really no boundaries for us. We can be open-minded, be creative, and a lot of energy goes into figuring out how to crack that nut. And this kind of reminded me of those other instances, and they happen every year, and this was one of them where I think it is kind of where the magic happens in our used to be conference rooms, but now
Yeah.
Teams meetings,
Yeah.
where we hash things out and we end up on the successful side. So that was really exciting.
Well, and sort of that relentless finding a way. Like it's easy to say, oh, this sucks. Like, I don't know. And then you just find a way. And you ask a lot of good questions because I think good lawyers ask good questions. So I guess I'm saying
Yeah,
we're good lawyers, Brian.
yeah, I would agree with you. I
Yeah.
concur, and I think the proof is we've had a lot of successes. And
Yeah.
it reminded me earlier this year, you had mentioned extrapolations where we've won those. Extrapolations went away for a long time, but then they came back, and we had some hearings at the first part of this year. This is going back to January, February, where there was this next round of extrapolations, and we were able to take them to ALJ hearing and win on those again. And Emily Solom of our team was instrumental in all of that. So it was good to see them bring back, not good to see them bring back extrapolations,
Yeah.
but the fact that they did, and we were still able to push back and win on those. We do have more extrapolations. I think extrapolations are, again, something that Clarent and Safeguard, the UPICs, are willing to do. But we've been through that battle. We continue to, so far, fingers crossed or knock on wood, have the secret sauce to push back on those. And on a personal level, for it's business
Mm.
related,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we have had all of these. We call them CPI audits, Center for Program Integrity. We took one to hearing. It was the highest dollar value one we've had, $1.7 million, 381 claims, and got a fully favorable decision. So
Woo!
that was back in April and May, and those kinds of wins. We don't win all the time. We're not batting 1,000, but we're doing awfully good relative what the average win rate is out there for all kinds of audits. And it's great to have a fully favorable like that. We get a lot of partially favorable. We just got one today. All the patients were favorable except one was half favorable. They call that a partially favorable, but you win
Yeah.
95%. Uh, call it whatever you want. We win
Yeah.
95%. So that was really those kinds of specific audit related stuff is really gratifying, and to see that we have a team now who's going to be able to continue that.
Well, I also think it's helpful, I think, to do this year in review because I think as humans we're built to like, oh yeah, this great thing comes. and then you forget about it 2 days later. And then like that feels like a lifetime ago, like May or June. Like, right. So I think it's really um, helpful to do this reflection back because a lot of wonderful things have, I don't want to say happened because it's unfortunate they happened in the first place, but that we were able to, steer people through hard times and come out the other end. So, all right, second question. Biggest surprise of 2024 in the hospice world?
Well, I'm pretty confident mine is the same as yours.
Okay.
So it's going to be the discontinuation of Medicare Advantage. Is that right?
I know. Exactly. And that was like January 2024, I think, because I was thinking like, oh, did it feels again so like a lifetime ago, but I would have bet lots of money if I was a betting person, like, oh yeah, that's for sure going to happen. I mean, I talked to clients like, yeah, I really think for sure this is going to happen. And then it, at least for now, pulled the plug. I mean, you never know. But yeah, I agree. That was the biggest surprise.
Yeah, and that was something that you and I have been preparing for. We always, I think you say some people say stay a step ahead, but you're more
Yeah.
like 8 or 9 steps ahead,
Yeah.
which keeps us on the cutting edge. And so we had been preparing for that for ever since it was announced because we kind of saw that that could have potential for really changing the regulatory and enforcement environment. What's going to happen with audits? So we were staying steps ahead of the government. We were planning on helping hospices in different ways for a long time, and and that changed everything. It's well, it didn't change everything. It changed our focus. Kind of, okay, now we're back to audits, and audits are going to be with us for a probably a long time to come, unless or until something substantial changes again. But yeah, for all the investment we had in trying to stay way ahead of the government and be ready for whatever happens, and for that to change, and then for us, we're kind of bounced back, and we're back to where what's in our wheelhouse with audits, which did continue, and they did seem to,
Yeah.
if anything, pick up. And it just seems into the future, audits are going to be a part of doing business, and a bigger part, unfortunately, than they were even 5, 6 years ago.
Well, maybe I'm going to throw some of my hopefulness. I'm still hoping that through industry advocacy, we could right size these audits in a way that makes sense because there's just duplication of effort, needless spending of government money on things that like, you just found like I'm doing everything. You got a fully favorable ALJ decision, and then like 2 months later, you get audited on the same kinds of issues. Like that's wrongheaded. So I'm hopeful in the future that we can make some uh, inroads in that's not a good use of anyone's resources. So, oh, well, I guess that brings us like dovetails great into our wish list for 2025. So my wish list would be, you know, trying to right size this enforcement because it's becoming so burdensome. And just even if I worked for the government, I think I just, in terms of taxpayer dollars, like doing the, like, I guess trying to better understand where do we think the problem people are? Because I get you don't want to pay and chase and all that stuff, but like, and you and I have been pushing for this for a while, is making sure that they're looking retrospectively in how cases end up, not how they start, in terms of like, is this a good return on investment? Is this Are the data analysis that we're using to identify targets really the right data analytics that should be driving this, or is there something else? And so my wish list is that we're really able to make some meaningful progress on changing the enforcement landscape in a way that is more aligned with um, the goals of enforcement, which is to discourage bad behavior, not people who are following, like people who just arbitrarily discharge people because they don't want to get audited or have a cap issue or something, like that's not doing hospice the right way. So like, but that's sort of, I feel like people are feeling like, well, but is that what the government's wanting me to do? Right? Like I'm going to get audited if I don't discharge people, but then if I live discharge people, then I'm going to get audited. I mean, we just got a question from someone today about that. Like, tell me what's the right thing to do here, because I'm getting these mixed messages.
Yeah, and that, talking about our wish list for 2025, mine was similar, and kind of wishing that CMS, and maybe it's the new administration with fresh ideas, can just see the value of hospice and then have their regulations and enforcement priorities fall into line. So I think it was in the last couple of years we got a study from a rather reputable
Yeah.
source, NORC at the University of Chicago, that really applied economic theory to say hospices save Medicare money. And it's not just the short stay hospice patients, it's especially the ones who are on service for a year. And I think if that kind of barrier can be broken down in the government and CMS, which I think just has a entirely negative perception of longer length of stay patients as a burden on the hospice system or a burden on Medicare, and instead see that actually there's cost savings involved in Medicare patients who outlive their 6 month prognosis. And I think if they can change their perception, and this might involve or evolve into more fundamental changes in the benefit, like, is it really a 6 month prognosis that should be guiding this? And we get to that 6 month prognosis, and all the battles that we fight are, well, one doctor says this, and another doctor says that, and a judge says something else. Are those really productive debates? Is it even reasonable to have that debate where you have qualified physicians all around? They're all saying they disagree with one another. Is it really right to pick a winner in that, or can we just
Yeah.
acknowledge physicians have different views, and those are not the hospices the enforcement should be aimed at? Go after the fraudsters. So, I mean, I've when I talk to clients, I talk a lot about the wide net that CMS throws out there, and I've been critical of it being too wide, because it does capture a lot of very good hospices on these very debatable positions, both clinically and with documentation. And what I think we've learned over the past year or two is that there are plenty of fraudsters out there. And a lot of hospices are scratching their heads about why aren't these fraudsters being weeded out when you see 50 hospices all being operated out of the same office building. Why don't you devote attention to that and just clear house there? And I'm sure I'm oversimplifying it in a way that CMS could tell me. I'm
Yeah.
oversimplifying that, but just hopefully with a fresh perspective and open mindedness, we'll see a different approach to hospices that really value what hospices do for patients, but also financially for the Medicare trust fund, and then kind of revise what they're doing accordingly.
Well, and I guess along those lines, and it's less like government, you do something different, but more sort of on our own volition is I use the whole don't be a one trick pony. Like, I really hope that hospices see the skills and strengths they have and apply them to a broader audience and not just be like, well, only here for this short time in someone's life, which is very valuable. But I think in some of the board presentations I've been doing, which are the most fun part, not to talk about big audits, but like strategic planning and whatnot, is getting out of our own silo of this is what I do, and start with the question like, what needs does my community have and how do they match up with my strengths, and making investments in things that align in those ways. And I think when you put that down on paper, not everything has to be a bricks and mortar kind of experience, but really like, it can be hospice adjacent. And I mean, I think we've had many podcasts talking about opportunities for upstream and all of that and working with different payers. But I think it's starting, but I still think a wider net of hospices need to diversify and see themselves as more than just, I provide palliative care to people who say they don't want curative care anymore. And I guess on the wish list too is hope that palliative care can really be developed in a way that's, you know, an option and revenue stream for people who don't want to give up curative treatment. Because to your point, Brian, I mean, there's cost savings when someone elects hospice, but I think even if you're on palliative care and getting curative treatment, maybe the choices you'll make will be different in that disease trajectory as part of being on palliative care. And so I just think hopefully getting palliative care off the ground in some type of meaningful way, even outside of like a demonstration project, because as we've all lived through Medicare care choices and all that stuff, I mean, you can put a lot of energy into demonstration projects that then never turn into benefits. So again, I think not just waiting for, well, the government needs to change the rules and the government needs to create a benefit, but the flexibility, there's some flexibility within Medicare Advantage on, non-hospice related things and potentially other payers for their high cost patient population. Um, so I think my wish list is that we get to, as lawyers, also help people guide them through those kinds of growth opportunities and not just fighting with the government, which we'll happily do. But I think, helping people grow and transform to better serve their communities. So that's on my wish list. Um, so,
And Meg, I know you had kind of said these are some general areas you're going to ask about, and one of them was what brings you joy
mhm,
and what gives me hope. As far as bringing me joy, uh, that's where I put in this idea of helping hospices, which are made up of good people. I mean, I didn't always represent hospices for the first 10 plus years. I represent a lot of different business clients. But once I started representing hospices and just seeing the dedication and mission driven nature of the people and the leadership and the clinicians, just to be able to help facilitate their ability to provide care. And then, as you mentioned, it's becoming an increasingly competitive area out there. Hospices and all providers are looking for ways to grow. And I think of it as hospices, have the best caregivers out there. And the more they can spread the kind of work they do and even expand into different areas, hospice people are going to have their heart in the right place. They're going to do the right thing. They're going to provide value. They're going to save people money, but they're also going to provide value to people's health and their kind of mental, emotional, spiritual well-being. So being able to try to facilitate them getting outside what may be their comfort zone and finding different ways to have them spread the joy that they bring or the
yeah,
comfort that they bring. Knowing that I'm a part of that, that's what I find really rewarding, and that's really changed over the past couple of years as I really focused on audits, but now I'm kind of looking beyond audits into just what is the business and how can we solve all of your business problems and kind of make you be ready to take on the future in any way that matches your mission, your interests, your skills, and it's great to be a part of that.
yeah, I completely agree. And I think, I want this kind of care to be around for me when I need it, which is hopefully
A good
as I
point.
turn
Uh,
50 here I'm in my waning days of my 40th decade of life. As I turn 50 here, right after the new year, like I want to be part of building a healthcare system that I want to care for me when I need that. And I think that, and and again, when I was putting together thoughts for this strategic planning meeting for this board of like, and I don't maybe want to go to a facility. I want to have care in my home, and I want to like communicate with technology through technology, and I want to, helping build a model of care for the future that's going to align with how I would want care, which is, you know typically I think most people feel like if I can stay at home, I want to do that. But right now the hospice benefit really has some donuts in it, right? Like it doesn't provide 24/7 care outside of GIP and a few days of respite. Like there is a real need for, how do you deal, and I've shared this on other podcasts of, people caring for a caregiver dealing, caring for their dying loved one. I mean, that is a lot, especially if you're elderly on top of that. And how are there more resources as people maybe don't have family close by or they don't have children? Like, how do we care for people where maybe the same community isn't there to support um, people? And so, how do we as a healthcare community sort of meet that need and support people, um, because I think that, you know something I talk about with my friends, because a number of us don't have kids, is like but maybe your eight kids can take care of me, Brian, when I'm old and infirm. But like, who's going to be there to care for you? And I think there's going to be a growing, population of people who don't have, immediate family there and available. And so, what does that look like? And how can we help support people in that process? So, I think this whole patient driven, which has been buzzword, I feel like, for decades in nursing home, patient centered care and stuff. But I think sort of getting back to the roots of what that means, and hopefully, like that is something that can really transform healthcare, because in some ways we're very innovative in healthcare. And I think technology is going to be a really tremendous tool for the future. And so I think, why can't we as hospice be on the forefront of some of that? Because more and more we're going to be dying chronic illness, like older and older, and there's going to be need for that. And we're going to be caring for technologically literate people who, so I think starting to build models of care that meet these needs into the future, because I think that it's going to be very different. What patients want now is very different than in 20 years from now. Um, how patients want to get their care. So
Yeah, just as 20 years ago was very different. So, and just, I mean, a couple of observations. First, you mentioned donuts in a way I've never heard donuts mentioned before. So I was distracted. I started thinking about donuts. So I may have missed some of what you said, but yeah. And as far as my eight kids, we'd be happy to provide you, whether you need routine home care or GIP. We'll just, whatever the per diem we can charge you, we'll get that. But kind of going back to kind of hospices, uh, kind of, trying to meet the competition, and it's all about patient care. How can you serve patients in your community? And I think hospices should realize they can probably meet those needs better than anybody if they think outside the box a bit. They have a lot of value to offer to their community and to patients based upon the skills they already have. And don't keep it to yourself. Kind of think about how you can extend yourself.
Well, I'm going to remove the word patient, humans. Let's not
Yeah,
even think of ourselves as patients, but how do we provide love and care to other humans? Because some of the stuff that people need isn't a patient clinician relationship, like all of the stuff about social determinants of health and how we can help people live not just a long life, and I can't remember the word, but what's increasing is hopefully the life you have, that you are well, right? Like, and
mm,
how can we support people in their wellness? And, um, because hopefully we're just caring for humans in our community, and then, you know, because I feel like ultimately that's what it's all about, is how can we be of service in the world? So that's what my 50-year-old almost brain is telling me about what the second half of what I want my life to be about too. So,
Oh, yeah, and I think kind of one event that happened recently that kind of shows how hospices can flex themselves into being helpful to the community. I've heard of, hospices provide bereavement care, and we're aware, Meg, you and I are aware of hospices who are partnering with other providers and other parts of their community to provide bereavement care where it's needed. And here in the Madison area, there was just a school shooting that is very shocking. I'm sure it's shocking for every community it happens to, and you never think it's going to happen in your community, but it really brings home the need for humans. And these are not hospice patients, these are teachers' children. They're dealing with something really significant and serious. Hospice people have some skills that can be useful in that situation. And don't what I would encourage hospices not to think you're in this box of only helping a certain category of humans. There's a lot of good you can do for a lot of different kinds of humans with your skills, and just be open-minded and see what good you can do in the world, and you're going to find it really rewarding. It's kind of how I have found. I kind of went outside the kinds of clients I ordinarily had represented, and then found a lot of joy in extending myself into a new area.
it's just because I'm so charming, Brian. That's why you came over. It's my
Yeah.
charm that has made you stick, not the work, just
Well,
my
no,
charming nature.
you saw through it. You saw through me. So that's
Yeah.
exactly it.
But yeah, I think both of us have been transformed by the work we do, um, in really good
Absolutely.
ways. So I feel like I'm a better human for it. So onward in 2025 of continuing to develop and be a better human. That's what my hope is. And I can only do what I can control myself, but it's my goal for the future. What I'm hopeful about is I can continue to be of better and better service in the world. So,
I think that's a good goal for everybody.
all right. Well, it's been a great year. And thank you for doing this with me, Brian. I really appreciate you, and grateful for our whole team that helps us, and really grateful for our clients who trust us in with really hard things that mean everything to their business. And so it's a great responsibility, but it's something that I think our team leans into, and really it feels remarkable to be trusted with big problems to solve. So,
Yep.
and we solve them.
I'm looking forward to the next set of challenges, because I don't think there's anything we can't overcome.
Wow, we're just so optimistic, Brian.
Yes.
Bring on the bells or something. Woo! So this was going to be.
We'll see how this year beats us down. I mean, we get beat down from time to time, but we're like the phoenix. We rise again.
Yeah. So this will be our first podcast release in the new year. So by that time, I will be 50. So.
Well, happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday. I'll probably be away when this releases, having fun, doing something cool.
I will read all the fan mail for you as it pours in.
Thank you. Thank you as it pours in. Awesome. Well, thanks as always, Brian, and thank you for our listeners. And if there's things you want us to cover in 2025 podcasts, always email me, and we really want this to be of service and useful to you as our listeners. So always shoot me an email. And then if you like our podcast, always rate us, because that helps people find us. And I actually do look at that, our rating on Spotify and Apple. And so thank you for those who do that. But if you do like our podcast and what we do, because it is a labor of love, it takes time to do it, that would be great. And happy 2025 to all of our listeners. Well, that's it for today's episode of Hospice Insights, The Law and Beyond. Thank you for joining the conversation. To subscribe to our podcast, visit our website at hushblackwell.com or sign up wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, may the wind be at your back.